Some of the biggest risks that companies face are completely invisible. Yeah, you won't find them on any balance sheet, but they can quietly grow strong enough to bring a multi-billion-dollar giant right to its knees. Today, we're going hunting for these financial phantoms, these ghost liabilities.
Just listen to this. We're not talking about some minor accounting detail here. Think of these things as financial time bombs, just ticking away. They have the power to completely dry up a company's cash, force it to break the promises it made to its lenders, and ultimately just crush its value on the stock market.
And to see just how real this threat is, look at this number, $30 billion. That was the staggering estimated liability that the utility giant Pacific Gas and Electric, or PG&E, was staring down.
So what was that $30 billion ghost? It was the potential price tag for all the wildfire damages that were being linked back to their equipment. It was this huge, uncertain cost that just hung over the company until it became terrifyingly real and pushed them right into bankruptcy. This is a perfect textbook example of what accountants call a contingent liability. So, as that PG&E story shows, these aren't just some abstract idea from a classroom. Nope, these risks have devastating real-world consequences that can literally reshape entire industries. Okay, so what exactly are these ghost liabilities? Let's get a clear, simple definition, and we're going to strip away all that confusing textbook jargon.
At its heart, a contingent liability is really just a potential cost. It's not a bill that's due right now, but it's one that a company might have to pay down the road. And here's the absolute key. This potential bill always comes from something that has already happened.
And this is the part you really have to get. This isn't about some mistake a company might make in the future. It's about dealing with the financial fallout from something that's already occurred. Like a defective product that's already out there in the hands of customers. Or in PG&E's case, power lines that have been operating for years. The cause is in the past. The financial consequence is still in the future.
So, how on earth do accountants navigate all this uncertainty? Well, they rely on three big guiding principles that are really the ethical backbone of the whole system. First, full disclosure. Basically, don't hide anything important. Second, materiality. If a potential problem is big enough that it could change an investor's mind about the company, you have to report it. And third, prudence, which is just a fancy way of saying when in doubt, be cautious. It's better to prepare for a loss than to just hope for a gain.
All right, now let's see how those big ideas get turned into a practical toolkit. It all leads to a really systematic process that accountants use to classify and manage these potential threats. This whole process, it really just boils down to one core idea. How likely is it that the company will actually have to pay up? Seriously, the answer to that one question determines everything that happens next.
So here's the framework they use, at least under U.S. accounting rules, which are called GAAP. There are basically three buckets. If a loss is probable, and that means very likely, usually interpreted as over a 75% chance, then the company has to accrue it. That means it's officially recorded as a liability right on the main balance sheet. If it's just reasonably possible, it gets disclosed, but hidden away in the fine print, the footnotes. And if the chance is remote, well, they don't have to mention it at all.
Okay, now we've got to talk about a huge misconception, one that trips a lot of people up. Many investors just assume accounting rules are the same everywhere. Well, they're not, and the differences, especially for these ghost liabilities, are absolutely critical to understand.
Just look at this. Under international rules, or IFRS, that word probable just means more likely than not, so anything over a 50% chance. Now compare that to the much higher, like 75% bar they use in the US. So what does this mean? It means an international company might have to record a massive liability right on its balance sheet, while its American competitor with the exact same problem might only have to mention it in a footnote. This can make the US company look way stronger than it really is, all because of a difference in accounting rules.
So we've covered the theory and the rules. Let's jump back into the real world and see what happens when these contingent liabilities actually explode.
The Siemens bribery scandal is just a classic case study. For years, the company was systematically paying bribes to win contracts all over the world. And that behavior, that was the past action that created a massive hidden liability that was just waiting to come due.
And this was the scale of the problem. Investigators eventually found that Siemens had made over $1 billion in corrupt payments. That was the hidden risk just festering under the surface.
And here's the consequence. The company ultimately had to pay roughly $1.6 billion in fines and penalties to authorities in the US and Germany to finally settle the case.
But the damage didn't even stop there. And this number is just mind-blowing. Siemens spent an additional $1 billion just on its own internal investigation. This is such a critical point. The total cost of these ghost liabilities is often way, way bigger than just the official fines.
And we see the same pattern again with Rolls-Royce. They paid over $800 million in fines for similar bribery charges. But in their case, the ghost liability had an even more terrifying side to it: debarment. What that means is a conviction could have gotten them legally banned from all government contracts, a move that could have been a kill shot for their entire business. So, with all these hidden dangers lurking around, how can we actually spot them? The key, it turns out, is learning to read between the lines of a financial report, because that's where the real story is almost always told.
This is how the pros do it. Analysts at big rating agencies like S&P, they don't just take the balance sheet at face value. They actively hunt for these contingent liabilities in the footnotes, and then for their own analysis, they add them to the company's total debt. They're basically rebuilding the financial statements to show the economic reality, not just what the accounting rules say.
And that, right there, is the big takeaway. True financial intelligence isn't just about reading the numbers on the page, it's about understanding the story that's being told between the lines. The footnotes. That's where companies have to disclose their lawsuits, their regulatory risks, their biggest potential nightmares. They're basically a map to the financial minefield, and they show you exactly what management is truly worried about.
So this leaves us with a final thought. We've seen that these liabilities aren't just accounting theory. They are unexploded ordinances, often hidden in plain sight. So the next time you look at a company's annual report, don't just scan the balance sheet. Go hunting in the footnotes. Look for those key words: litigation, contingencies, regulatory inquiries. And then ask yourself, what potential crisis is this company telling me about right here in the fine print?